Hello, welcome to part one of the manufacturing process project. Today we're going to be doing the secondary snowmaking. This one I think challenged us as a group the most. It was very difficult, but it has some cons and pros. To start off with the cons, the thing with this is the user guide that they give you is it doesn't help you on how to run the simulation or how to create a successful batch. It just tells you what the simulation is about and the very detailed mathematical equations you can use for you know picking up different additions and stuff. But through trial and error and multiple people doing different runs, I think we figured out the perfect composition, perfect additions to make. Now the good thing about this is during the competition that we did for the Emerald Steel. Um, the thing was that instead of the basic oxygen, we used electric arc furnace. And during the competition, the batches that you make in the first part, you'd have to use in the secondary. So if you made three successful batches in the first part, and then you transfer them to the secondary part, and if you failed in the secondary part, then your batch is gone. So you have to make sure that you know what you're doing. The good thing about this is that obviously we're not in a competition, and the steel that they're giving us is constant. So the carbon that we need to be added is the same. The amount of silicon we need to add is the same. The amount of manganese we need to add is the same, as well as aluminum and nibirium. The only thing that changes I saw over multiple times is that the time changes. So we don't want to time too high because we're going to have to be waiting too long, and we don't want to time too low. Another thing is it's a bloom cast, and our aim temperature is between 530 and 540. Now, the thing that's very confusing with this simulation is that there's a bunch of processes, but we're going to be only using the CAS OB and the stir station. The CAS OB, we're not going to be even using it properly. We found a little trick that helped us a lot in finally doing a successful batch, but we're going to be using the stir station in the beginning. So let's talk about the additions that we're going to be making. Very quickly, the additions we're making are here we go. We're going to be adding high C ferromanganese for the obviously the manganese percentage as well as the high carbon and the ferromanganese high purity. So why we're using two additions of manganese is because we need to go from 0.12 to 1.4, which is a very high amount or high difference, high jump to do. So we're going to be adding high purity for the pure manganese, and we're going to be adding the high C ferro for obviously the high carbon that we need in the first part. The second thing we're going to be doing is the silicon. So we're going to be using ferrosilicon 75. The good thing about this is it has a high percentage of silicon and a high percentage of aluminum. The reason why we don't go for these two is because this is a low percentage of aluminum and this is a low percentage of silicon. So I think this is a perfect uh, addition in between them. We're going to be adding pebbles, aluminum pebbles, to increase our aluminum in the beginning of the simulation, even before we start tapping. And the ferroniberium, we're going to be adding this because obviously we need it and there's no other one to add. Alright, so let's start the simulation. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure our time is at 16. We're going to add our pebble straight away order and we're going to start tapping. We're not going to add any slag or anything like that because that adds a lot of extra chemicals to our batch that we don't need. Um, so we're going to just go straight with the batch we have. We're not going to add any slag composition. Hopefully this will be done soon. We're going to go straight to the argon stir station. We're going to increase the flow to 0.8 and we're going to wait till this hits 2.5. Now this has nothing to do with the actual reason, but we just found during our testing that once our processing cost reaches 2.58 with the argon flow, then that's a sweet spot and we close it and we go to the CAS OB. So this was this simulation. It's a time game, right? It's three things that you need to do. You need to make sure you make the proper additions, as you'll see later on. We're going to be adding these additions, as I discussed, making sure your temperature is at the proper temperature for casting, the bloom cast, and the thing is the time. You cannot, as the previous basic oxygen, is you just want to have the fastest time, but in this case, we need the Pacific time. So here we need either 1 hour and 1 minute or 1 hour and 11 minutes. So we're getting close to the 2.58 mark. So I'm just going to focus up real quick. All right. Now we're going to go to the CAS OB. Now we're not going to be using this process as intended. We just found this one was the closest to the Bloom cast. So when we're doing our time, it's the most quickest to get there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make our additions real quick. So we have high fair, we're going to add 1700 of this. Our high purity, we're going to be adding 300 of this. So let me just look at my notes real quick, sorry. 300, and we're going to be adding 270 of the silicon. And we're going to add 70 of this. Alright. So now it's just a waiting game. So we just need to get that time and temperature down. Obviously, in a real life scenario, we will not be using, we're not going to have our cast or our batch just sitting there, obviously. But with this simulation, I guess whatever can get you a successful batch works. So I think this trick really helped us because we were very confused on what process to go to, or we need extra time, we need lower temperature, but I think this really helped us. So our temperature, we're gonna wait till it's down to 15, 32, 33, because it goes down one temperature when you're transferring from the CAS OB to the Bloom caster. And I think we're good on time. I think we're gonna have to just cast a little bit early, but that's fine. Now we're just make sure it goes down below 40. So I think at 1 hour and 5 minutes, that's when we're gonna go to the cast. Temperature wise, I think we're fine, and our composition is fine because we made sure that these are all correct. And we can do a sample test, I guess, just to make sure, but there's no need. We've gone through this many times. Okay, our temperature is perfect. Now we just need to wait on the time. Hopefully, yeah, everything is perfect. So we're gonna wait for 1 hour, and I think we said 3. Yeah, we'll just wait. I think 4 is fine. 1 hour and 4 minutes. Don't want to waste any time here. Okay. As you can see, it has extra time, and as well as the temperature does go down by 1 degree, but we are well within our temperature range. And there we go. Perfect secondary steel making. Our composition. Our aim was a bit high, but it was within the min and max range. As well as our silicon was on point, as well as our manganese, which was halfway through the max, but that's okay. Our aluminum was a bit lower than expected, but it's just right above the minimum, which is fine. We can counter this by adding a bit more pebbles during the initial stage. And the Niberium is perfect. It's almost on the aim that we need, and everything else is fine. Our total cost is 24.9 per ton. We could get this lower, obviously, but I think it's very adequate. I'm not sure what to base it on, but yeah. So as you can see, just a very basic definition. So what happened is this is our manganese, and this is when we made our additions. As you can see, the manganese had to go from 0.12 to 1.4. So this is when we made our additions. This is when we turned on our argon, which lowered the temperature significantly, and then this is when we waited at the CAS OB, as you can see here. Thank you very much for listening, and it was very fun working on the simulation. As a group, it was very challenging, but I think if it wasn't for the group, it would have taken a single person way longer, because the more people you have, the more trial and errors you can do. Thank you very much for listening, and